It's astonishing that it's like we're the frog in a boiling pot of water, and the heat just keeps getting turned up, and we don't realize, a lot of us, what's happening.
Yeah. So, a couple of pieces here. Number one, it's always easy to put this back in perspective if you flip the question around. Imagine if President Biden did something that Donald Trump did. What would Republicans say then? Right? A president of the United States suggesting, no. That governor, that mayor, no, that's we have to liberate that city. I mean, that's exactly the rhetoric that compelled me to speak at the press conference last week, not just as a senator, but as an American. Number one. Number two, when they suggested that the mission of the military was to go in and do the liberty, that is not what Marines are trained to.
Look, it sounds like a joke, but it's not a joke anymore. We are literally in a pot boiling like frogs, and someone has turned up the heat to the maximum, but we are still thinking, oh, nothing will happen. Hey, the guy is saying liberate the cities. What is this, a Marvel movie? The president is sitting there acting like the country is his personal property, saying, liberate this area. Send the army there. These are the opening lines of dictatorships. Remember, he used the same rhetoric during the George Floyd protests in 2020. He ordered tear gas on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park and posed with a Bible in his hand. Why? For the photo op. Now he's talking about using the military against his own people. Marines, he says. Marines! They're trained to deal with external threats, not their own citizens. This is madness and clearly unconstitutional. But of course, Republicans are playing dumb. Because when Trump does it, everything is permissible. If you like the video, give it a like so we can make our voices heard against this nonsense.
So, Senator, where do you see things now? How do we move from your incident and the one we saw today with Brad Lander and who himself, noted that he was just there to accompany defendants and advocate for a due process for those defendants. You were in that federal building there again to take care of other business, but happened to have the secretary down the hall and say, "Okay, let me go stop in and listen," and then wanted to address what was being said and was summarily handcuffed out of the building. How do we move forward from here? Because my sense is there's only one ear open to this. The other ear is shut. As you noted at the beginning with your first comments that, a handful of Republicans showed up. But to be clear, whether it is the assassination of state officials in Missouri or Minnesota or the arrest.
And do you know what the saddest part is? No one is surprised anymore. A senator, a U.S. senator, enters a federal building just to listen, and boom, he's handcuffed. What's the crime? Listening, speaking up, participating in democracy. So think about it. In this country, defending due process has become a crime. But what's the deal? When it comes to Trump, everyone turns a deaf ear. Ask the same people, what if Biden had done that? Oh my goodness, a coup. Oh my goodness, communism. But when Trump does it, he's just patriotic. For heaven's sake, this blue cities issue is a whole other level of madness. He's saying it outright, we'll punish democratic cities. He's not even hiding it anymore. Silence is complicity, friends. One side is shouting, we are the people, while the other is just after power. And we're still debating what's normal.
Tax bill that may be $5, less that you're normally keeping in your pockets, but you don't have this crazy random healthcare bill.
Right.
Probably so, right? And the reality is that people are going to die. Listening to the stories of people that literally have only been able to live because of Medicaid, it's heartbreaking. And the fact that we're talking about rich people just keeping more money in their pockets while literally other people are going to die, it sounds anti-American and definitely sounds anti-patriotic.
So one of the things that generally when I've covered big bills in domestic policy in D.C., there's this idea of like the Senate is like the cooling saucer, and that, and that usually things come back from the Senate like more moderate, but both on the left and the right. That is generally the way things go. It seems to me like Ron Johnson and the sort of right-wing faction in the Senate is actually pushing to make this bill more aggressive on the cuts side. And I'm wondering if you were anticipating that, or if you thought you were expecting a more moderate bill.
No, I was expecting the Senate to fix everything. I mean, I was expecting it still to come back as a bad bill, but we're talking about
it would get better.
Correct. I thought it would get better. We're talking about a bill that only made it through the House by one vote.
Right.
One vote. So literally it's like two people went AWOL, right? And another two Republicans voted with the Dems. And then another one just said, listen, I'm just going to white light this or, vote present.
Let's stop right here, because this is no longer a simple political issue. It's literally a matter of life and death. So while people are rejoicing over a $5 tax cut, behind the scenes, thousands of people are losing their health insurance, hospitals are closing, and people are literally dying. But what do you know? The rich will have a little more money in their pockets. Bravo. Let's applaud. We talk about America's founding principles: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Well, we've already thrown the life part out the window. This bill is a death budget. And the funny part is, we were hoping the Senate would fix this nonsense. That so-called cooling saucer where laws become reasonable. Well, instead, they sent the bill back with a flamethrower, making it even worse.
There's this mechanism called the provider tax, which actually would hurt hospitals. Let's sort of do the short version that way. They're trying to squeeze more revenue. My feeling always, when I used to cover Congress day in, day out, was that the hospitals were big interest groups.
They are.
They will drop money on your head if they don't like it. They will be up in your office. Where are the hospitals? Honestly, it's wild to me that they have not shown up in a big way.
I don't know.
To fight this bill.
I have no idea. I mean, it's kind of like you saw the farmers, right? Like when we were going through that, like, continuing resolution, the farmers were like, wait a minute. Like, they showed up, like the Farm Bureau was like, we are here, right? And so it is odd because the hospital lobby is a really big lobby. And a lot of people probably think of lobbies and they think, oh, you're going to be the antithesis of me. But when you're talking about rural America, like I lived in East Texas, let me tell you, hospitals are shutting down. And in rural America, you don't have as many providers either. And so literally, if you have this specialized cancer, you can't stay at home. You've got to go somewhere else because there's no one that knows about the help that you need. So it is really odd. And I tell you this, that there's going to be more hurt that comes to red states than blue states. Blue states can actually take in a lot of this, not to say that they should and not to say that it's right, but like it will be
disproportionately red states will get hurt by the Medicaid cuts in both these versions of the bill.
Yes, absolutely.
And now comes the most ironic part. These cuts will hit red states the hardest. So those who scream for smaller government will lose their hospital to a city 3 hours away, but they'll still shout freedom. You live in East Texas and need cancer treatment? Sorry, buddy, get in your car and drive 200 miles, because the hospital there has already closed. Medicaid is being cut, and there's no private insurance in rural areas anyway. But you go ahead and cheer. This law is stopping liberal nonsense. Come on. At this point, it's not ignorance anymore, it's stubbornness. Moreover, the hospitals aren't even around anymore. Normally, those lobbies would be dropping files on your head, but now they're not making a sound. Maybe even they haven't realized how terrible this bill is. And the bottom line is this isn't a health policy. It's a test of conscience. And Republican senators are failing that test miserably. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more realistic and honest reviews. Together we are strong.